Hi, this is Steve with Taking It Slow. Today I thought I'd talk about the Sidewinder, the Reese hitch we put on. What I'm using to pull this 40-foot Montana is I have a short bed F350. At first I thought I'd be able to pull this thing just fine with a standard Rotoflex hitch I had, but it proved not to be true. But even with the Rotoflex, it has the rubber bushing gasket that sets in between in this area here, and I'll show you a picture of that. That the rubber bushing actually was sliding, it was pushing backwards. So I had to replace the fifth wheel hitch. And since I had to replace it, and a couple of times, I don't know if you can see it, but I had to touch this up. I actually bumped it with the truck. Didn't damage the fiberglass or didn't do any damage on the truck. The truck was just fine, but I found there was limitations because some of the RV parks I go into, the tight turns, was too difficult. So I switched over and decided to go this method versus a sliding hitch in the truck. It's less weight this way. And it just seemed to be a lot easier way of going about it. With the Rotoflex, I might have gotten at best maybe a 45-degree turn out of the truck before I was going to come in contact with this, and that's really limiting. So that was challenging. So I put this on, and now I can actually swing easily 90 degrees and still have 8-10 inches of space between the fifth wheel and the truck. So it works really, really good. There are some things you got to get used to it, because on this it has a block in the bottom right down here, and that actually has to get positioned in between the jaws of the fifth wheel, and you have to get different blocks for depending on which fifth wheel you have. I have a companion, so that one's set up for that. The trick is dialing that in, because you want that lock to be pushed as close forward to the kingpin as you can. And what you do is you hook it into the fifth wheel, you get everything tight, then you move that block forward and get it as tight as you can. And even with that, I have found I had to do more adjusting, because if it's just not perfectly straight, it feels tight, but it's not tight, and you're constantly moving it to get it forward so it is in that tight position. The fun thing about hooking this up is because now basically when I'm lining up here, I get relatively close to this, but this no longer really becomes my target. As long as this is close to where I want to be, it's fine, because it'll automatically move itself in position. It would swivel easy now if I didn't have my tri-stand on here. But what you're lining up with is this bolt, because that's the part that doesn't move for us when we're backing in and hooking up. So I've had to back up a couple of times to get that to come in before the jaws would lock on this thing. Once you learn that trick, you have that, that's pretty good. The other thing when you're pulling this thing, even with the block down here moved as far forward as you can get it, and it can't get any farther, so it's absolutely tight in between the fifth wheel, you can get some slop back here. So when you're pulling it down the road, you'll see this thing move in the back of your truck, and it's doing this, and you can feel it, and it feels really weird. And actually I should have done it this way, is what you'll feel. And it feels weird, and you think that block is what the problem is. The problem's not the block. The problem is the kingpin, because you got the block in there tight into the fifth wheel. This kingpin is not as tight, so therefore this kingpin can actually move back and forth a little bit. So the block becomes the hinge point. So you can actually, and it does move when you're going down the road. It's a strange feeling to get used to, but you can't get used to it. But it's like, wow. I just wish it didn't exist. So I mean, that part's pretty good of it. I'll look to see if I can get some videos. I'll tag it onto this thing, pulling it down the road, and show you, see if I can pick up that particular movement. But other than that, I mean, so I'm telling you the bad sides and what I love about this thing. The wife and I put it on. It was an absolute armful to put it on. It is extremely heavy, as you would expect any kingpin to be. But once we got it on there, got it bolted, it's been absolutely great. Have had zero problems trying to get in and out of anything now, because I can turn just as sharp as I want to turn on getting this in. You know, we'll see about getting the videos put on to show just how this thing handles going down the road. There's a good one. So I showed you the video where the semi-truck passed us, straight road, no side winds or anything else other than what was coming off the truck, and you saw how this thing pivoted. Also showed you again calm wind, but the road was windy, and that's where I was making left and right hand turns following the road, and you found this thing moving pretty good. Now when the semi passed me, didn't even feel that. You know, you can see it, but you don't feel it. It's minor. On the S turns, you can definitely feel it, and it gives you a strange sensation when you feel the back end of the truck getting pushed over like it does when that thing hits the full left or full right and doing that travel. But again, like I said, you know, I've adjusted this thing where I couldn't even adjust it far enough forward. I can't even get these jaws locked on this thing. So you end up having to back it up so you can get those jaws locked around the kingpin. If I was to do this all over again, I probably would not elect to go this way, and I would have just had to replace my original kingpin, because again that rubber has slipped. But then I would have also then got a slide for inside of the bed using the companion version that's a manual versus an automatic, and I would have just done that way and we would have resolved it. Just didn't, you know, I was hoping to resolve everything with one, but it didn't pan out that way. So my recommendations, if you all are going to do this, unless they figure out some way to make the kingpin here, you know, a little tighter in the jaws, because you're realizing the distance you have here, oops, sorry, the focus, compared to what it is back here where the bolt is. You know, so it just takes a very little bit of movement here, just a little bit, because the hinge point, the pivot point's right here, it becomes exaggerated and the movement in the back end becomes a lot more, which is again what you were seeing. So you know, I've got it as tight as I can get it, and that's what I'm saying. And my thing is, I would not recommend doing this. Spend the little extra money, get a little extra weight you're going to carry, but get the sliding fifth wheel hitch instead. I hope this was helpful to you. Have any questions, let me know. Thank you.